Hello, everyone, and our guest, Adey Mohamed. Welcome to, I think this is the third edition of Undefined. We are very happy to have you. And again, for our viewers who are joining us for the first time, Undefined is a platform for undefined conversations. We talk about anything, everything, and nothing is the best way that I can summarize it. So Ade, thank you for joining us today. And we're going to start with you introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Adey. Thank you, Ben, first of all, for putting this together. My name is, as I said, Adey Mohamed. I am a student at the University of Manitoba. I am doing my PhD in Indigenous peace building. I'm looking at contemporary and Indigenous peace building and trying to come up with a hybrid kind of, if there is an hybrid out there, a hybrid kind of solution to conflicts that have been going on in Africa.
Okay.
I also work here in Canada as a mental health facilitator. Anything else, Ben?
Um, I think that will do for now.
Oh,
Thank you. You were marketing yourself there.
I know.
I was going to ask you about your studies, but you kind of got ahead of me. But I think everything is in order. Thank you, Ade. My first question to you would be, sorry to get into your business here, but I think you were in Kenya recently,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you just got back to Canada. How was Kenya?
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always great to be home. It's
Okay.
different. Yeah.
Okay. You said two things there I'm going to pick on. Uh,
Okay.
First is that it's always great to be home.
Yeah.
And second, that is different. So is Kenya home for you?
Yeah. That I think definition of home is really broad, right? Home is where you feel home, you know, comfortable, accepted, you fit in. And I'm privileged to actually have both homes, right? And get to share both experiences of home, where in Kenya, home is where my relatives, my mom, my motherland, you name it is. And on the other hand, in Canada, home is where I've built that same environment with friends, people from my community, colleagues, people like you that I met long time ago. So home definition is broad. It's home hits the heart,
Okay.
whichever way you want to define it.
Wonderful. But you said that it was good to be home, right? Good to be home
Yeah,
in Kenya. When
yeah.
you returned to Canada, did you feel the same way? Did you go like, it's good to be back home?
Is that a tricky question? Well, I'm going back to what I said. Again, home is what hits the heart. So I get warmth from both ends, but a different kind of warmth. When I'm home in Kenya, I feel like, phew, you know, it's like that my puzzle that is missing kind of fits in. I just pick up from where I left. Not necessarily that people wait, people slide move on too. I've just learned to go with that as well back home. Wherein here is where I work, I go to school, I raise my children. So this is home for me too. So
Mm.
the puzzle here is different from what I try to fit it in there. I want to relax. I want to get to know my people. I want to build networks and connections. It's different. You are home recently too, right? I don't know if we share the same sentimental feeling of when I'm saying fitting in the in the puzzle. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, it seems you wanted to push that question I asked to me,
On you. Yes,
implicate me as well that I
of
was
course,
home.
this it will take the two of us to do this this show or program.
That's a good one. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
I was in Nigeria from I think early May until late June.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, it was late April or no, early May until late June.
Yeah.
And it was the longest I think I stayed since the first time I left Nigeria in my early 20s.
Yeah.
To the point that even my dad was wondering, like, hey, are
Yeah.
you going back or not? And I was
Yeah.
like, don't you guys want me to stay longer?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but it's strange. It's the longest you've ever stayed. Is there something we should know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's home for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, you create this sense of home everywhere you go. Because
Yeah.
even though I was born in Nigeria,
Yeah.
I realized that a part of me have also dropped in the several places that I've lived in. And
Mm.
a part of me is also no longer completely in Nigeria. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's no longer completely anywhere else, for
Mm-hmm.
that matter, right?
Mm.
But let's throw it back at you again.
Okay.
Since you are the honorable guest here, I don't want to take your place. So when it comes to identifying yourself, and here in North America, I hear people using these hyphenated identities all the time. I'm African American, I am Japanese Canadian, I am, Nigerian Canadian, and so on. By the way,
Mm.
that's not how I identify myself. Um,
Yeah.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
do you also kind of see yourself in this hyphenated identity? Or is there a way you would describe yourself, given that you said home could be Kenya for you, home also is Canada? Are you also involved in this hyphenation?
It's interesting you ask that because this is an evolving thing. Like, today I might feel different from tomorrow. And it always depends on the context. I might be here, but miss home, like Kenya, for so many other reasons. It could be it's an Eid celebration.
Mm,
So my sense of homeness gets so heightened, and I'm like, oh my God, can you believe if I was in Kenya right now? Like, what would that feel? But to answer your question about what I identify is, I'm trying to move away from actually identifying myself from a specific, well, Kenyan or Canadian, because at the same time I have to look at the context of where I am when I am in Kenya. Also, people identify me as, I'm a Muslim, I wear hijab. Are you from the north? We in Kenya, we have a term called waria for people, Kushite groups from northeastern part of Kenya. Do I in that context feel like that's home,
mm,
right? Do I always have to feel I have to defend myself? You
mm,
see, so it's really hard for me to answer that question if I put all those together.
mm,
And if I am here, I still carry that same identity, Black, Muslim, woman. I still carry and embrace all that as well. And I get to identify myself on a piece of paper as racialized groups or like visible minority, all that. But I think to where am I moving with this? Like, I'm just a human being. I'm human. Why
mm,
don't we just say we are all human beings
mm,
and just leave it to that?
mm, mm,
And it's an evolving process.
mm,
It's not easy.
mm. I like that. So this um, revelation of your identity, like this kind of renewed sense of who you are, it seems to me it came about as a result of, even in Kenya, your Kenyanness, if I would put it that way, has been questioned, right?
Yeah.
You said people would want to locate you, to a specific place. People want to locate you as a Muslim, as a
Mm,
woman, as a member of a, particular ethnic group, and so
mm,
on.
mm.
And so probably, that is used to adjudge whether you are a true Kenyan or not, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And even here in Canada or North America generally, you
Mm,
said
mm.
that it's also the case that you could also be described as a Black woman or as a Muslim or as a Kenyan. And all these epithets, in a way, gets you to come to that conclusion that why not we think differently about, our identity? Why are we not thinking differently about our identity? Why do you think that a lot of people still find it useful to define themselves based on these labels, right, that we have come to popularize? The labels of being a Black person, or being African, being Muslim, or being African Canadian, and so on. Why do we still have these labels if, you have reached that place of problematizing them? And it seems to me that not so many people have got there. Why do we still have these labels? And how can we really get rid of them? And is it useful to get rid of them?
I think there's a lot that plays into this, right? We are socialized as human beings from socialization, that we are different from the other, right? So we carry those socializations where one group might feel superior, inferior than the other because of their race or their color or their ethnic groups. I don't like using tribe because that's, to me, it's just too, like, so like from a different ethnic group. So it's not something that just started, and it's not something that will stop anytime soon. That's just how we look at colonization and what that has done, right? So if we look at all the interplays of those things, and like, the labeling, like you're an immigrant, so you came here, you came to this country, but people don't look at, like, question why this individual must have come to this country. Nobody leaves their country, right? So what is it in play? Like, what other things don't you see that has pushed this individual to come, and now you're looking at them as a host country, as refugees, as asylum seekers, as people who need help, as people who shouldn't come here, and the doors should be shut, right? Or people who should be deported. Like, there's more to that of why don't we see each other as human beings, because that's how human beings are. Just the othering of others, because we have been socialized from a younger age. Like when we grow up, even myself, I grew up thinking I'm better than another individual who looks like me, talks like me, looks like me. You can't tell the difference, but I can tell the nuances of another ethnic group that I share a locale with in my own location where I come from. Right? And then I come here and I am put in the same position by like another group of people based on my visible skin color, right? Maybe the way I talk, the way I dress. So the layers are like an onion layer. You can just keep going and going and going. The point I'm trying to make here is just for us to understand that, again, going back to that point, like at the end of the day, we all bleed blood. There's no blue blood, green blood, black blood, whatever blood out there. And it's funny that I'm saying blood, because when I need blood, like if I'm in a position that I need it, I could get it from anybody else who thinks they're more superior, or who I think I'm superior from. And it's funny, right? Like, think about it.
I know that you have, and one of the things you said, which is true, stereotyping is a feature of, almost every community. One way or another, we're all guilty of it. It's the nature of, people to tend towards their kind and then demonize others, or even if not demonizing others, to create other forms of othering. But I want to touch, I know you have redefined yourself as a human being, but at the same time, I want to talk on certain existential crises that this, issues with identity sometimes birth. One of which is you talk about, your visible skin color. And I want to talk about that. I'm dark skinned and you are of a lighter hue. And if I were to be in Kenya now, and so many people have said they've given me Kenya as my home of birth. Some have given me Sudan because of, how I look. Some even Somalia. Probably they don't know much about Somalia, and so on. But if you and I were to be in Kenya, or even Nigeria, for example.
Yeah.
I think that it will be easy for me
Mm.
to settle in as a Kenyan or
Mm.
Nigerian,
Mm.
and this is me making assumption, I don't know if you have had this experience, than
Yeah.
for you to
Mm.
actually fit in because of your, lighter skin hue,
Yeah.
Africanness,
Mm.
if I would put it that way,
Mm.
might be questioned because of that. Is this something that you might have experienced?
Yes, I experienced that when I was going through like schooling, where like my classmates, whether it's a joke or no joke, or like people will be like, "Oh, go back to Mogadishu," right? So I am more of a Somali.
Hmm.
And nobody ever asked me, "Are you from Ethiopia?" But when I came to Canada, everybody just says, "Oh, are you Ethiopian?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." Just went from being Somali to being Ethiopian. Actually, even like I was in this Kenyan association when someone asked me, "Oh, are you from Ethiopia?" And I'm like, "Really? Like you guys, like you're my people. Like don't do this, yeah." You you know what I mean? So if I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I sometimes I find it, and I'm sorry to use this word, and this is it's really like I like I don't know how to put it. Like maybe you can help me. Is it ignorance? What is it? Is it? Can you help me with this, please?
I can't help you. So,
I cannot like and these stereotypes are not only to certain people. Even I have outgrown it, but I have been stereotypical too, where I had to guess like, oh, if I met you a while ago, I'll be saying the first thing I'll say is like, oh, you're from I don't know Sudan, or like I don't I like probably that's what I would say like. But where does this come from? Is it that we that's how we it's so I don't know. Are we trying to learn, or are we just this is how we have been socialized, like I said?
To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are so many factors.
Yeah.
The socialization that is a
Mm.
direct product of colonization.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we know that in certain societies, groups were distinguished,
Mm.
in terms of how they actually look. And we could cite examples in whether it's Rwanda,
Yeah.
in terms of that dichotomy between the Hutus, the Tutsis, whether it's even Nigeria, in terms of the Hausas, the Fulanis looking a
Mm.
certain way, people who look a little bit like the colonizers, right? Of a lighter skin,
Mm.
kind of privileged than others. But we could even go back, and I think this is a question that people are asking: is this something that came with colonization, or has it always been there? So when I was in Japan, for
Yeah.
example, people
Mm.
also wanted to be whiter than, and
Yeah.
I'm here assuming that people could be white or black. I'm
Mm.
saying, given these two notions that we use and append to ourselves, the
Yeah.
idea of whiteness is huge among the younger generation. That the use of products. So I thought bleaching was something that is prominent, for
Mm.
example, among Black communities, but it's not. People told me also their experience in Korea, and I could also speak about Japan.
Yeah.
Some people actually are going the length of using certain products, to be lighter, than
Yeah.
they so if you really ask me where we could trace this, I don't know what to even call it,
Mm.
malaise or the crisis of our own identity,
Yeah.
because it is indeed a
It is
crisis.
in a
It's been
crisis.
used to
Mm.
render certain people
Mm.
slaves and
Yeah.
victims of certain systems.
Mm.
So indeed, I would call it a crisis. If you really ask me to trace the roots of it, I will not be able to, but I
Mm.
can say clearly that slavery, that colonization, took it to a whole new level, right?
Yeah.
They emphasize and essentialize
Mm.
these differences. But I'm looking at the time, and before we go,
Yeah.
again, still talking about the skin color, I
Mm.
know that on the basis of that, I have met someone from North Africa who
Mm.
had to emphasize the point to me that, I'm African too, right? And I'm like, yes, my brother, I know you're African. Because
Yeah.
there has always been this debate as to
Yeah.
who is an African, right? Is
Yeah.
an African a person who is born on the continent? Is it someone of darker skin? Is it someone from south of the Sahara, or can an Algerian or white South African, be an African in that sense, right? And so we speak about who an African is, on the African continent, and then you move to a place like North America, and we speak about who is a Black person, right? So those two, concepts that have been used to describe people from a certain place. If I ask you to define, let me put that tough question to you, who an African is, and who a Black person is, would you see any distinction in that? Is there a way you can resolve that issue for us?
That's a tough one. Again, like just what you said, it goes back to like the history, right? If you look at the history of America, North America, then you have to ask, who are we defining? Are we defining people who were forced from their home, literally forced and brought into another continent, right? And everything literally wiped out, completely taken away, right? By force. Or are we talking about people who have been pushed in the pretense of savior mentality, saving these people from their own people, kind of? And Africa is very resourceful by, same kind of idea, but we are not going to call it slavery now. We are going to call it something else fancy, and pushing these people to come. And you're saying the doors are open by not forcing them, by having them through this process of becoming asylum seekers, bringing people to their knees, running away from their fellow people who are trying to kill them, right? And trying to serve the same master, right? So to answer your question, it's really hard for me to define who an African is. What are we talking about here? Because both are forced, but a different kind of force. Some are taken by force, but some are not taken by force. The situation is made such a way that they cannot stay.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't expecting that you resolve that problematic in terms of identifying, and maybe it's even a wrong question to ask, right? Given this whole sense of renewed identity configuration, like you saying you are a human being, so you can belong wherever you want to belong. An African could be, the descendants of slaves here in North America or the Caribbean, will feel the strong sense of connection, or even in South America, and want to return, right? And people should have the freedom and the right to want to do so. An African could be one on the continent who feel a strong sense of connection to the land, to their community and so on. So to me, I feel the answer to that question is in the existence of people and what they make, right, of themselves in relation to the activities and their everyday life. Because even the notion itself, the idea of Africa, is also quite problematic. Where did that idea come from, right? Some would say we trace it to the Romans, and it's also used to describe, people of darker skin and so on. So we don't want to get into all the conceptual issues. So, but I think at the everyday level, people could redefine themselves the way they deem fit. That is really what I think about it. But your last question, before we go, and I know that, your life is divided between Canada and Kenya. Canada, Kenya, and your research is mainly focused on Kenya, but of course its findings is widely applicable. What do you intend to resolve, with your research on indigeneity. And I think it's very much related to the issues of place and home and belonging that we have been talking here. What do you intend to achieve with your PhD study?
I guess, like I said, at the end of when I introduced my topic is an hybrid, right? I look at situation and which I looked at where there are this conflict that is reoccurring over and over and over again. And there are, I don't know, like how many NGOs in this small place. But then the question is, why are we, what is not working here? Right? Like if there's an issue and you try to put a fire off, it's either the fire destroys everything and we start all over again and we rebuild, or you harness what is left and build on that. But if the same issue keeps reoccurring, that means the root problem of this, whatever is going on, is not. So is the problem the approach, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And by approach, I'm like, are we using a Western model or are we using the indigenous model? And these are both fluid. They change with time. Can we come to a consensus where we can agree that maybe there's other ways to look at it, and maybe even the indigenous ways could have a piece of the pie? They can have a seat on that same table and make decisions that affect them directly. So that's what I'm trying to look for. I'm trying to come up with a situation.
So centering the people at the heart of the peace-building practices, right? Yeah. But also realizing that even the practices of the people have changed over time.
Changed. Yeah, we've moved on. We've moved. We've look. We have what? Intelligence now. Like who knows? Whatever we are doing here has been captured. You don't know. We're moving to another phase of only God knows what it is. So we have to change. We have to move. We're evolving. So how do we do that while we still keep our principle and precepts and values and morals? And I know the identity path is messy, but how do we harness that and be people of certain roots that's very strong? Yeah.
How are you doing that as an individual? Like, leaving aside the societal definition of who you are and you redefining yourself, living on your own terms. Has that been easy for you, especially in a place like this?
So in the context of Canadian context?
Yeah, or? Canadian, Kenyan, being a human being, not being a Muslim, not being a Kenyan, not being a Canadian. How have you really found that form of existence?
I haven't arrived. It's a process. So I'm still in the process. So like I said, you evolve with time. You meet amazing human beings. Like you experience, my God, people that might not look like you, sound like you, that are so amazing. So you get to see the other side of humanity, and it moves you an inch closer, right? And both ways. Yeah.
Well, from every indication, it seems you're enjoying that process, and long may that continue, Adey. Yeah. So I want to thank you again for joining us. I think we've scratched the surface of a few things, particularly your studies. We would like to hear more from you. Once you're done, we'll have you back here again. So for now, I would say a huge thank you for sparing time to join us here today. And we hope to see you soon. All the best with completing your dissertation. Bye.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody. Bye.